My name is Dan Kolkhorst. I'm the Vice President of Land Development. Started out as a project manager and worked my way up through the system. So that's what I've been doing. Well, as my boss would tell me, if it was shorter than a fire hydrant, that was my responsibility. So water, sewer, drainage, power, phone, gas, cable, and eventually parks and pathways all ended up being under the things that I was concerned with and had to create. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a history about how we got from where we were as the Woodlands Corporation to where we are now, the Howard Hughes Corporation, or Howard Hughes Holdings, I should say. When I came to work here, I went to work for the Woodlands Corporation. My paycheck was actually one from the Mitchell Energy Corporation. We all got paid by Mitchell Energy because we were a wholly owned subsidiary at that time. I thought it would be that way forever. I thought I'd work for George for the rest of my career. But in 1996, he sold the Woodlands to two entities, Morgan Stanley and Crescent Real Estate, which is a real estate investment trust company. And we operated as a wholly independent company underneath their umbrella for several years. And there were a lot of changes between 1996 and mid-2015 or so. Crescent was bought out by Rouse. Rouse was bought out by GGP. GGP went through a bankruptcy at that time, and the company that emerged out of that was called a new company that ended up being the Howard Hughes Corporation. Howard Hughes and Morgan Stanley owned us at that time, and it wasn't long before the Howard Hughes Corporation decided that there was enough value here that they wanted to see if they could buy out Morgan Stanley, and they did. And so it was in the late 2019, 2018, 17, 16, somewhere in there. Let's say 2016 is when that occurred, and we all became under one nameplate. We were no longer the Woodlands Development Company. We were now Howard Hughes. And now we're part of Howard Hughes Holdings, and it's a publicly traded company, and that's the evolution of our name and how we got here. But a lot of the same guys are still here. Some of us are still doing our thing. The relationship between SJRA and the Woodlands Development Company is complicated. Mr. Mitchell, when he started building the Woodlands, really wanted to control everything and did control everything. He had his own cable company, he had his own gas company, he built the first sewage treatment plant, and MUDs were kind of a secondary thought. And Mike Page was a young attorney. Mike Page was a young attorney working at Vincent & Elkins, and really tried to convince Mr. Mitchell to consider letting the SJRA become the wholesaler for water and sewer facilities in the Woodlands. There were a lot of pros to that, and there were some cons, and Mr. Mitchell fired Mike, said, "We're not going to do that." And so it was almost a year or so later that Mr. Mitchell realized that maybe that wasn't such a bad idea to begin with. And that's when Mike Page came back on board and got with the attorneys here at the Woodlands Corporation and made a deal with the SJRA to own and operate the water plants, the sewer plants, all the sewer lines that are bigger than 12-inch and all the water lines that are 12-inch and larger. So those facilities, those major facilities, are all owned by the SJRA, and all those services that the SJRA provides, they charge the MUDs for. They are the wholesaler of all of our water and sewer services in the Woodlands. Can't build a community without that. So there's been a lot of changes with SJRA and the Woodlands over the years, and it's primarily the personnel. But what's amazing is that over all that time, the people that have served in the role that I'm in today have always been on a first name basis with the leadership of the SJRA. We know some of the board members, we know Aubrey, we know Ed. These people are not only people that we do business with and respect for their business acumen, they're also, we have personal relationships with them as well. And that's gone back over decades now. So this is a trust that has been built between our company and the SJRA to our mutual benefit. I mean, we've gotten to do some really fantastic things because of the SJRA, and the SJRA has gotten to do some really fantastic things because they've been so intimately involved with the development in the community. This partnership we talked about, the SJRA and the Woodlands, it's unique in our community. There's a lot of developers out there that have master districts and sub-districts, but this model that was put together by Mr. Page, Mike Page, and by Mr. Mitchell, David Bumgardner is a name I probably should mention. He was an integral part to making all this thing come together. Without the SJRA partnership with the developer, and also with the Joint Powers Agency, now known as the Woodlands Water Agency, each MUD would be responsible for its own water and sewer. So each MUD would have its own set of wells and own water plant. Each MUD would have its own sewage treatment plant. Each MUD would have its own lift stations and water lines and sewer lines. And under the contract that we made with SJRA, instead of having 10 sewage treatment plants in the Woodlands, all of them small, all of them independently operated, there are 3 major sewage treatment plants that serve all of the Woodlands. And that's incredible. It's a much more efficient way to take care of your waste. The number of water plants is greatly reduced because you have larger water plants that serve larger areas. Instead of having 10 segregated pieces, we're on one common water system. So it makes for a lot of efficiencies that you don't get when you have 10 independent MUDs, or at one time more than 10 independent MUDs doing their own thing. So that has been the key to make our water and sewer a very efficient and well-operated system. Regarding turning points in our relationship, key decisions that were made, 2 things come to mind. One is the Bear Branch Reservoir, which is now wholly owned and operated by SJRA. It's a major detention facility. It holds back a lot of developed flows from going downstream. And creating it was our engineer's idea, but owning it and operating it was something we mutually agreed would be in everybody's best interest. So everything at the Bear Branch Reservoir is now owned and operated by the SJRA in all the area that it inundates when we have our larger flood events. The other thing that was a key turning point was the creation of the Woodlands Water Agency. The Joint Powers Agency is the former name of that organization. Under the JPA, all of the MUDs rely on one operator to operate their systems. All of these systems are completely integrated because they're all part of the SJRA's overall system. So having one operator who's knowledgeable about every one of the MUD's utilities and facilities is critical to keeping the system successful and operating efficiently. The SJRA owns and operates our water facilities and our sewer facilities. For the most part in the early years, for the first 30 years, the developer built those facilities. All the water plants, all the sewer plants, all the water lines and sewer lines were all built by the developer, in accordance with a master plan that had been provided by the SJRA. We knew how many people were ultimately going to live here. We knew what the land plan was. We knew the topography. So with the help of the SJRA, we picked out where we were going to need future well sites, where we were going to need future lift station sites, what size lines needed to be run and what size streets, 12-inch water line, 16-inch water line, 24-inch water line. And the SJRA kept the master plan up to date and always allowed us to modify our plans to accommodate differences that would happen along the way as we were growing. But by and large, we followed the master plan that had been laid out for us, which means that we always knew that if we kept up with our capital spend and built the facilities that were needed, that the SJRA was always going to be right there behind us to take over those facilities, and not only just take over those facilities, but hire the personnel and the equipment and the redundancies that they have to put in place for when they're operating a public system. So SJRA always picked up the ball as we got further along into the development. The SJRA actually started funding these facilities on their own. sewer plants, water plants. Those expansions a lot of times were built with funds that the SJRA had secured independently of the developer. Well, SJRA had a plan, and as a developer, we worked with SJRA to create the plan and tell them how many homes we were going to be building on a yearly basis, how many residents we expected to be in the community over time, and the master plan that was created was always updated by the SJRA to make sure that we were always going to have adequate water, adequate sewer, and adequate drainage facilities to serve the needs of our community. The developer spent the capital in accordance with the schedule, and the SJRA always came along and provided the manpower and the operational efforts that it took to operate those facilities after they had been accepted. So when you have a master plan and you're trying to follow it to the best of your abilities, there's always glitches and turns along the way. Don Sarich and I were known to not always agree with each other's ideas on some things, but it turned out that we always had the best interest of the community at heart, and we always did our best to build what was going to be reasonable and maintainable by the SJRA on a long-term basis. An answer was a phone call away. It wasn't a bureaucracy. There were limited numbers of people who had limited power to do certain things. And you knew that if you were speaking to that person, that you'd get an answer. And you didn't have to go up a chain or down a chain to get to where you needed to be. And the same thing exists today with SJRA. If there's information that we need regarding anything that's going on in our community, I know who I can call to get straight up answers on what's going on. There's never been a rivalry. We're both working towards the same goal, which is what's so beautiful about the relationship we've had with SJRA for the last 50 years. Pave the way is a great way to start that question, because that's what we do. We pave the way. Our team, my team, ultimately was the team that cleared the trees, was the team that laid the water sewer lines and built the lift stations and paved the roads. So the key is, in the Woodlands, is and always has been the trees. You know, the pine tree gets all the glory. He gets all the front page news, but it's the yaupon that really does all the hard work. It's what makes the Woodlands the Woodlands. When you're driving down the road and you see only forest on either side, it's because the yaupon is there with all the other forest clutter that makes the Woodlands feel the way it does. Limited clearing, requiring forest preserves along your collector streets and major thoroughfares, not clearing them, leaving them to be natural in perpetuity has been the pivot point. But there's also other pivot points. So I got to talk about a couple other things. In the Woodlands, excellent planning was always part of the program. We've had some remarkable planners. We had Richard Brown and we've had Don Bauer. Those guys I didn't get to work with a whole lot, but Robert Heineman, Jim Wendt, Gloria Howell, Matt Swanson, Steve, these are all people that put together a land plan that worked with our topography. We always think of ourselves as being relatively a flat community, but it's not. You have Bear Branch and Panther Branch that are absolutely low areas compared to the surrounding areas. Spring Creek is here. Compared to the Houston area, we're almost in the hill country here. So we really have to deal with some topography up here and pick our spots for our lift stations and where our water lines are going to go and how our gravity sewer lines are going to run. And our planners always designed the community to fit in with the topography. And the SJRA master plan always followed that plan perfectly. One of the things that comes to mind, it's a detail, but all of our sewer trunks are all built in the floodplain, lower than all the houses. So instead of having large lift stations all over the place, we were able to reduce the number of lift stations and use these major trunks along all the Bear Branch and Panther Branch to efficiently carry our waste to where we needed it to go. Excellent planning, that's the key. Third thing I'm going to put on there, the pivot point, or whatever you want to call it, is governance. And you're going to get into a lot of that with some other people that know a lot more about that than I do. But the creation of the MUDs and allowing the SJRA to be the wholesaler of our utilities, and then the creation of the township, along with the forerunners of the township, which was the WCA and the TWA, those covenant restrictions that everybody talks about over and over again that maintains the quality of life in our community. It says you can't do certain things here without getting permission to do that. You can't cut down trees in your yard without getting permission. These are the things that make our community really, really special. So those are the three things that come to mind off the top: governance, excellent planning, and trees. Some of the next big challenges that we're going to face with the SJRA in the Woodlands Division is our aging infrastructure. It's on the top of my mind because this community has been great for 50 years, and we want it to be great for the next 50 years. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. SJRA is celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. There are some facilities that need to be rehabilitated as they age over time. And that time has come for a lot of the facilities here in the Woodlands. There are some water lines that need to be replaced. Sewage treatment plant number 1 is nearing the end of its life, and making sure that this community is served in the future, as it has been in the past, should be on everyone's top priority list. There are so many things that can go wrong that we need to make sure they don't. The residents of this community are blessed, truly blessed, to have the systems in place that were created back in the mid-'70s. These ideas that we hold fast to today were all a result of a lot of things that happened in the '70s and early '80s. We're in a great position to serve our current residents. We're in a great position to develop the remaining land that we have here in the Woodlands. And that's a testament to the planning that went in before and how we intend to proceed with the balance of our development, working with the SJRA. The best operator is one that does this job without making a fuss, and they provide for our daily needs for water and sewer and drainage. The SJRA is ever present. The operators there never ever take a day off. When the tap is turned on, we know that we're going to get clean water. We know we're going to have efficient systems to take away our wastewater. And it's a remarkable achievement that always goes underappreciated. Thank you is not enough, but I want to say thank you because SJRA is one of the backbones that make this community what it is. If you were in private business and you were providing this service, there'd be a bunch of vice presidents, and there'd be a CEO, and he'd have a private jet, and he'd fly off to, Panama to go see something new this weekend. But the SJRA is not a profit-making entity. They are here to serve their constituents and serve their constituents only. They're here to make sure that they're doing their best to make sure that our water and wastewater system is the best that it can be. And that's what really, really makes the SJRA special. They're not in it for the money. They're in it to create a healthy community.